It was a crowded afternoon at Los Angeles International Airport. The terminal was buzzing with people rushing to their gates, some in a hurry to catch their flights, others lost in conversation or scrolling through their phones. Among the sea of travelers was Maria, an overweight woman in her late 30s, who was making her way to gate 35. She had been planning this trip for months, looking forward to visiting her family across the country, but her excitement had slowly turned to anxiety as she was about to board the flight. Maria was used to the judgmental stares and rude comments that often came her way due to her size, but what she wasn't prepared for was the treatment she would receive on the plane. As she boarded the aircraft, she noticed the flight attendants whispering amongst themselves, their eyes flicking over her body in a way that made her uncomfortable. She tried to shake off the feeling and took her seat, hoping that the flight would go smoothly. Unfortunately, her experience was about to take a turn for the worse. As Maria settled into her seat, she noticed the flight attendant walking toward her. The woman had a stern look on her face and a cold, dismissive attitude. She didn't even greet Maria or offer a polite welcome. Instead, she stood at the edge of the aisle and glanced down at Maria's seatbelt. "I'm going to need you to adjust your seatbelt, ma'am," the attendant said in a clipped, judgmental tone. Maria, already feeling self-conscious, adjusted the seatbelt as best as she could, but it was tight, as it often was. The attendant huffed in annoyance and made a pointed comment. "It's not safe to fly with a seatbelt like that, you know." The word stung, but Maria didn't want to make a scene. She tried to smile, but the flight attendant didn't seem to care. As the woman walked away, Maria felt her heart drop. She had hoped for a relaxing, peaceful flight, but instead, she was met with cruelty. What made it worse was that no one around her seemed to notice or care. She was just another overweight woman on a flight, subject to the silent judgment of others. As the flight continued, Maria tried to distract herself with a book, but her mind kept drifting back to the hurtful words of the flight attendant. Every time she glanced toward the front of the plane, she could see the attendant giving her side-eye glances, as if waiting for her to do something wrong. Maria's anxiety began to rise, and she knew she wouldn't be able to relax until the flight was over. Then, just as she was about to put the book down and try to sleep, she heard a familiar voice. "Excuse me, is everything all right here?" The voice was calm, but it carried an undeniable authority. Maria looked up in surprise to see none other than Clint Eastwood standing in the aisle, his steely gaze fixed on the flight attendant who had been giving her such a hard time. For a brief moment, Maria couldn't believe her eyes. Clint Eastwood, the legendary actor she had admired for years, was standing right there, and he was speaking up for her. The flight attendant, startled by his presence, turned to face him. Clint's gaze was sharp as he addressed the flight attendant. "Is there a reason you're treating this passenger like that?" he asked, his voice calm but full of authority. The flight attendant, now realizing who was speaking to her, faltered. I am just doing my job, sir," she stammered, her tone defensive. Clint's eyes narrowed. "Your job is to serve and treat passengers with respect, not to make them feel uncomfortable or ashamed," he replied, his words cutting through the tension in the cabin. The flight attendant, now visibly flustered, tried to brush off the comment. "I didn't mean to upset her, I was just asking about the seatbelt," she mumbled. But Clint wasn't having it. "It's clear to me you've been treating her differently because of her size. That's not how you treat people. Everyone deserves dignity." The other passengers in the surrounding area had noticed the exchange, and a few of them began murmuring in agreement. Maria's heart swelled with a mixture of surprise and gratitude. She had never expected someone like Clint Eastwood to come to her defense, let alone stand up to a flight attendant in front of an entire cabin. The flight attendant, now visibly embarrassed, stood silent for a moment, realizing that her actions had been noticed and called out by one of the most famous actors in the world. She muttered a half-hearted apology to Maria, but Clint wasn't done yet. "You'll do well to remember," he continued, his voice now softer but still firm, "that we're all people, deserving of kindness and respect. No one should be made to feel less than because of how they look or who they are. With that, Clint turned and walked away, his presence leaving a noticeable calm in the cabin. Maria, still in disbelief, sat back in her seat, her emotions a mixture of relief and gratitude. The rest of the flight was much more peaceful, and Maria couldn't help but feel empowered by the experience. Clint Eastwood had shown her that standing up for what's right, no matter how small the situation, could make a world of difference. As the plane landed, Maria thanked him quietly, and Clint simply gave her a warm, reassuring smile before exiting the aircraft. She would never forget the kindness of a stranger in the form of one of Hollywood's most legendary stars. If you've ever witnessed someone stand up for what's right, or if you've had a similar experience, let us know where you're watching from in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon to stay updated with more incredible stories like this.